Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel once again. So in today's video we are going to learn how we can draw and paint standing cypress or scarlet gilly. You can take this sheet horizontally or vertically. So I'm thinking to create two groups, one with the drawing and another one with the watercolor. So let's start with today's video. And when it comes to the flower, these are very small flowers, so you can create 5 petals like this. Now the structure is totally different, but why we can see only 5 petals? Because the perspective is as front perspective, wherein you can see all the flowers petals clearly, including the center part. But the actual structure is something like this, wherein you can see the extended structure and then petals. So you can keep the direction of the flowers at different angle. So you can make it tilted towards left side, tilted towards right side, and we need to do it because we are creating all these flowers in a group. So you can keep the flower petals little smaller for few and little bigger for few if the perspective is towards left and right. And then you can create sepals as well at the base of the extended structure that we have created. Now you can keep the left and right perspective, keeping the center part intact. So something like this you can do. Now we are going to repeat the same thing what we did with the help of pencil. We're going to do the same thing with the help of brush. So I'm using this size 6 round brush. You can use little smaller as well because the flower structure is very small. But I'm using 1/3 of my brush to create all these flowers. Now repeat the same thing what we did with the pencil. Create few petals and then extended a structure. You can do the base of the flower with the help of green color, which I'm not doing as of now. And likewise you can create multiple structure. Because I'm using bigger brush, how you can control your brush is depend on how much pressure you are applying into your brush. So if you are only using tip of your brush, you can create a fine thin line. If you apply more pressure, then you can get thicker line. And based on in which direction you are moving while applying pressure, you can create petals or leaf kind of structure like this. So we need to do these things while painting these flowers. So practice all these things first and then you can paint all these flowers easily. So let me paint one more. Again I am using only tip of my brush because my brush size is little bigger, but you can use a smaller brush as well if you have. Now these are the basic guideline. Now how we can compose all these flowers, how we can create leaves and all those things, let's learn. So I'm using this needle pen. You can use normal ball pen for drawing and create a stem like this, and then start creating leaves. Cypress flower has very fine leaves in it, but very bushier. So create multiple structure. These are very fine structure. So basically we don't have any leaf kind of pattern, but you can extend this vine kind of structure and you can create a tree branch kind of structure here. So make it little bushier, do some crisscross around these lines, make your lines wavy a little bit, and something like this you can do. Now let's do the same thing with the help of watercolor. Before that you can extend these lines a little longer, but keeping the negative space in between, because in these negative space we are going to paint our flower wherein the perspective is front. So that's why I have kept few area negative. Now do the same thing for the watercolor painting as well. So I'm creating the middle stem with the help of pencil first, and then you can create leaves. Again for the leaves, because we need fine structure, so I'm not applying too much pressure into my brush. I'm using the tip of my brush to create these structure. So you can use any shade of green color. I'm using sap green color for now, and I'm repeating the same thing what we did in the drawing. So create multiple fine structure having some branches, sub branches, pattern into it, and you can repeat the same thing until you get satisfied with your structure. You can use little darker shade, lighter shade, and multiple shades you can use to paint all these things. So let's do it quickly now. If you are doing some overlapping, make sure your previous color have dried, otherwise you might messed up with the colors as well. So try to do some overlapping once your previous colors have dried completely. Now these are the leaves. We have done with the drawing, we are done with the watercolor painting as well. Now let's create the front flower wherein we can see all the petals clearly. So for these two negative space that I have created while creating the middle stem, I am creating the front perspective flower. So I have two negative space, so I'm creating two flowers here. Likewise, you can think your own and create multiple like this. Now let's create the same thing with the help of watercolor. So again, I'm creating 5 petals clearly visible and keeping one negative space in between. Now you can keep these flowers as many as you want, but again we need this as a group of flower, so try to create multiple perspective around it. So let's draw all the flowers first. So create 3 to 4 petals. 2 petal might be visible very clearly if you are smaller in size to get different kind of perspective. You can keep center part as well, or you can completely hide the center part for the side perspective flowers. For the side perspective flowers, we need extended structure like this, so which is needed for this particular flower. And then you can keep few left and right perspective quite near to the middle stem, and something like this you can do. Now how many flowers you need is totally depend on you, because it does not have very defined pattern in it. In the tip of the stem you can create oval kind of shape to create flower bird, and then in the flower bird you can see the sepals very clearly. Something like this you can do. So for the flower birds, sepals are important, the structure at the base of the flower, so you can create something like this. When it comes to the drawing, you can do some extra shading and detailing into the sepals so that you can see things clearly. Once you are done with the flowers and the flower bird, you can create multiple leaves in between the flowers as well. And something like this you need to do. You can highlight the middle stem a little bit, and we are done with the drawing. Now we need to repeat the same thing with the help of watercolor, and if you are only interested in drawing, you can do some extra shading and detailing around the flowers. Although these are very small flowers, so I'm only adding one line in between each petals that we have. Now let's do the same thing with the help of brush. So start creating small petals for left and right perspective. Again, you can keep the petal shape little smaller and bigger, and then you can create the extended structure of the flower. I am using only tip of my brush and applying little pressure because these structures are very fine in shape, and you can create as many as flowers you want to, side, front, left, in every direction. As these flowers are scarlet gilia, so you can use a scarlet red, or else you can use any shade of red as per your liking. You can keep few flowers lighter in shade, and then you can do some overlapping of the flowers with the help of dark shade of red. So these things also you can do, although I am keeping the structure quite simple so that even if you are a beginner, you can paint all these things easily. The only struggle is creating all these flowers petals, which is very smaller in size. So you can keep practicing these things and you can do it easily. Now we are done with the flowers. Let's do the flower birds. So for the flower birds, I need little lighter green and yellow kind of shade. So I have mixed green a little bit in the yellow color, and again creating these oval kind of shape at the tip of this particular branch. You can do these things in between of the structure as well, like I'm creating few in between flowers and few at the base as well. So something like this you can do. The flower bird and flowers dried completely, and meanwhile you can create the middle stem. Now because of front flowers we cannot create stems throughout, so make sure you are not doing mistake here. You are creating stems in between flower itself. Once your flower birds have dried, you can create sepals with the help of dark shade so that we can see the sepals clearly. Sepals are the fine green structure we see at the base of the flower. So you need to repeat the same thing for all the flower birds. And I'm also adding little hint of red color around my flower bud. So I'm just going through a little bit so that we can see red color as well into the bud. Now the flowers have dried completely, so you can add yellow color in between the center part wherein we have kept negative space. That is why to create the center part of the flower, negative space is important while creating the flower. Now we are done with the flowers, we are done with the flower birds. Like we did in the drawing, we need to create few flower leaves in between the flower as well. So add leaves around the flower throughout the structure. You can create more leaves at the base and do the finishing touch here and there, whatever is needed. I think I can add few more flowers, so I'm adding few more flower here and there quickly. So you can definitely do these things if you feel few more flowers are needed. And then just a little extra thing to create a background, so I'm using lighter shade of a yellow green color and creating a background kind of structure at the base. Again, this is not important, it's optional. And same thing you can do for the drawing as well. So with the help of hatching method, you can create parallel lines at the base. You can do throughout the structure, it's totally fine. It is totally depend on what kind of shade you need around the background. So I'm doing it only at the base, creating some parallel lines and then cross line. Once you create cross lines, it means cross hatching. If you are creating only parallel lines, then it is hatching. And likewise you can also do some background for the drawing. You can think about keeping all these lines at distance if you don't need dark shade. If you need darker shade, you can keep all these lines closer to each other. So we are done with today's video. Hope you have liked it, and thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video.